Hi. Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
hi.
Am I audible to you?
Hel- Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I audible to you?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
perfect, perfect. Should we
I
wait
can
for
hear
like a
you.
couple of people to join in and then we can start?
Okay, sure. I mean, we can just hang out casually until then.
I was actually
How?
just playing the guitar. Wait, I was waiting for you, so I was just like playing my guitar for some time. Have it
Oh,
here with me.
lovely. You play guitar?
Yes, I do. I love music. I play the guitar and the piano. I have my band back home in Bombay. Haven't played the guitar in a while, so thought I'll just pick it up and play it.
So we share a passion, at least one.
Really?
So even I am also a guitar player, although a beginner, but I love playing guitar.
Oh wow, okay. Do you play the acoustic or electric? What kind of songs do you like?
I play acoustic guitar, yeah.
Okay. And do you have a favorite band or like artist?
Of a lot of them, a lot of them. I'm a talking Rolling Stones.
Really? Oh my God. So you must be liking Bon Jovi, all those guys, right?
All
Like
the
you like old
classics, and
music.
especially the ones in the 80s are phenomenal. Um,
Yeah, 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 man. There's like no
the
comparison
country in
for
the
sure.
guitar area, I love the countries, and otherwise for listening, I love 80s music. All of them. Michael Jackson,
Michael
Whitney
Jackson
Houston,
was like the best.
the
He's my
best one.
favorite. Yeah, for sure. I didn't know,
And a
yeah, you
lot,
played the guitar. That's really cool. We should jam sometimes then.
definitely. Oh, you have the guitar in your
Yeah, it's
hand.
with me.
Really?
I would just play.
That's lovely.
Okay, I think people are
Okay.
joining now. Hi guys. Hi
And
Kushal. Hi everyone. And how is where are you right now? Where are you in India? Like in Bombay or?
I am actually living in Thane,
Okay,
and
okay.
I've been to, but my education is based in Mumbai. I mean, like the Fort area. So,
All right,
hi,
okay.
Mr. Gaudi Jackson from London has joined us. He's a
Okay,
renowned
hello.
blogger and author.
Hi,
And
hi.
my aunt Pramila has also joined. And yeah, my parents have also joined right now. So
Oh,
everybody is
hello.
excited.
Oh, I'm super
You hello.
excited as well.
Hello, sir. Pleasure to welcome you. Um, we may start by within a couple of minutes. So
Sure,
seven,
sure.
yeah, 7:20 Indian time. We will just begin the interview.
All right, no problem at all. And how's quarantine been for you?
Oh, quarantine is just chilling at home and exploring
Yeah,
exploring
that's true.
alternative hobbies. But honestly, I am dedicating quarantine to just continue my usual stuff. I mean, hello, sir. Somebody just said hello, Utkarsha ji. Okay, so I'm doing the usual stuff because the fact that I have a lot of time at my hand, I want to use it to my advantage, and
Of
this
course.
will
Yeah.
really help me.
No, that's great. Lockdown's been great. I mean, there's so many things I've learned. And I'm sure even you must have, tried new things and yeah, it's been great. Now I'm actually happy that I'm here. I'm not in lockdown anymore, but like I'm sure you must be, having a good time back home also. I miss India so much right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can just understand staying away from family and
Oh no, trust me, I
uh,
was like so tired of seeing my family every day. Like I'm fine. Because I've been seeing them every
okay.
day since the past 6 months. I think at one point you just get tired of seeing the same faces every day. So yeah, no, of course I miss them, but like I'm happy to be here as well. Hi
Oh,
Ria,
yeah.
what's
So,
up?
okay.
Are you stuck in Switzerland? No, I'm not stuck in Switzerland.
Okay.
I'm here.
Delart in the Inde has joined. Thank you so much for
Hello.
joining.
What's the time in India right now?
Okay, so it's 7:16. Okay, we can start. That's all
Yeah,
right.
sure, you can go ahead.
Uh, okay, so somebody just said, okay, I'll introduce myself, and the introductions are coming. So, good evening, good day. I am Utkarsha. I am a columnist, lifestyle and culture blogger. I've also appeared on 3 Indian channels and a couple of newspapers and magazines. I love talking to very inspiring and engaging people who are really out there changing the society. And on the occasion of the Daughter's Day, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Rajalakshmi V. Patil, who is a great daughter and doing great pride to her parents and her family by being a full-fledged author at the age of 17, by being a social entrepreneur, environmentalist, and an active climate change warrior. Rajalakshmi, welcome to the conversation and happy Daughter's Day.
Thank you so much for, this lovely introduction. Really means a lot. And yeah, I'm just trying to do my bit here and there, and all these kind words really mean a lot to me. So thanks so much to everyone who's tuned in right now. And yeah, looking forward.
So let's ask you the question. So where are you right now?
Uh,
Geographically, where are you?
right now I'm actually back in Switzerland in my school. I'm studying here, so it's actually on the Swiss Alps near Geneva, like an hour away. So yeah, I'm back
Hmm.
here. In
So
grade
how
12.
are you
So
spending your quarantine in Switzerland? What's your routine like?
So actually, luckily, like there's no lockdown here anymore. Like they had a lockdown for like 2 months, but now there are no really any restrictions. But yeah, we're not allowed to go out of campus. But yeah, we have our usual classes. So like every Monday to Friday, I have my 6 classes every day. And then in the evenings, usually I'm playing either badminton, football, or my music lessons. So yeah, there's a lot going on. And then we have like expeditions, which are basically like we go for treks every weekend. So yeah, I'm always like busy and engaged here. So that's pretty much what I'm doing here. And of course, my
Lovely,
university applications are soon due, so I've been working on that.
lovely to know that you are close to nature, and I am aware that's where your passion lies, and you are going to reveal that through subsequent questions. And lovely, lovely to see you basking in the lap of nature. That's just
Yeah, it's
what you are, and
beautiful.
that's where you should be. So Rajalakshmi, I went through some of your poems, and I must say that your flair for poetry and literature is phenomenal. And do
Thank
tell
you.
us in detail about your first poetry novel, Mystic, and what message do you intend to convey to your readers?
Oh, okay. So initially, to be like very frank with all of y'all, I did not intend to actually, publish my poems. So I was never writing poems to get it published in the market. So for me, it's always been like, whenever I experience something or whenever I'm going through something, like poetry has always been a means for me to vent out my emotions. For example, if I had a bad day at school, then I would come back home and maybe, just write down my feelings, and that would turn into poetry. And also because I've been surrounded by so many creative people, so they have inspired me. Actually, I remember in grade 7 when I think I had a really bad day at school. Like it was like probably one of like it was a very emotional day. So I came back home, and then usually how children cry when they're back home, or at that age you'll just like go in your room, lock yourself up and cry. I would never cry. I would always
Hmm.
like write down my emotions, and that's how poetry started for me, as a means of like venting out my emotions. And of course, traveling and then studying here, like moving from Mumbai to Switzerland, that obviously broadened my horizon and outlook towards life. And that's when I started to capture these moments, which we're going to experience again. So that's precisely how I started writing poems. And Mystic, the idea of publishing it, so that actually happened in the lockdown. So like I really wanted to make the most out of my time. And that's when I thought that maybe I should. Your video is paused, can you hear me? Hello? Yeah, I think the video just paused for a bit. I think can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. The
Okay, I
video
think the
is
video
blurred, but I
paused.
can hear you. It's yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I was just saying that the idea of publishing it actually came in the
Mm,
lockdown. So I really wanted to make
mm.
like, productive use of my time. And that's when I thought maybe it's like the right time to showcase, my passion for poetry. So, and of course, my friends also encouraged me, they were like, Rajashmi, why don't you go and like, why don't you publish your poems? Because they really liked reading my poems. And I think around mid-March, or not mid-March, actually, end of March, that's when I started getting into the whole publishing process.
Okay. So basically, your lockdown musings are being published, and it was just very natural and spontaneous, with nothing really planned, but it was always in. So when did you discover that you are going to write poetry? When did you discover that you can write poetry? And what was that exact moment when you wrote your first poem and it came out on the paper?
Oh, okay, so that's actually a great question. So I think I'm not sure how old I was, but I think it was around the age of 10 or 11. It was actually a very emotional moment in my life, and it was actually when my Aji, so she had passed away that day, and that was, being so young, and all of this happening at that age. Like obviously, it was very shocking. It was very tragic. It was very upsetting for me, as a kid. And that's when I wrote my first poem, which was, dedicated to my Auntie, my grandmother. So that's ideally how it started. And what's interesting is even
Okay.
she used to write poems. So I thought
Oh,
that, maybe writing a poem would be like a perfect tribute to her because she was really good at literature. And that's why my dad keeps saying, I have a genes. So yeah, I think that was my first poem I had written about her.
that's really inspiring and heart-touching, and I'm sure your words are reaching the
Mhm.
energy, are being heard, are
Thank
being
you so much.
heard by the energy. And so now here's a very fundamental question that drives everybody crazy, including me. How do you handle writer's block?
How do I handle, sorry, what again?
Writer's block. How did you overcome writer's block?
Right.
Whenever you have faced writer's block, how did you?
So obviously it's not that easy that you just sit and then you can just write like that. It doesn't come that easily, of course. I feel like to write something you should always be, feeling something and it should always be genuine. You should never like, I have to write today. The attitude should never be that. Like you shouldn't always, live with the attitude like, today it's like 8 o'clock, now I have to write something. It never happens that way. So, writing is never, you can never schedule writing. It's never like, or you can never allot a time for writing. It just comes, naturally. It's like it comes with the flow. Maybe you experience something new, and that's when your flow of that's when your thoughts start flowing. Of course, I have like sometimes I'm just sitting in my room and I really feel like writing something, but then I just can't put it into words because maybe I'm not in the best mood that day. But I feel when you have an open mind, when you have a calm mind, when you have a peaceful mind, when you have a mind that is not overthinking, that's when you can actually write down what you want to write. You can never force yourself. It's always when you have a stable and a peaceful frame of mind is when you can overcome that writer's block. And you should always be confident in your writing. Like sometimes people from inside they feel like I it's not good enough, or maybe people will not like it. You should never think about what others will think of what you write. It's in the end it's your work. You're the one who's going to either feel happy or sad about it, and what others think about your writing should never bother you. So that's honestly, I never really give much thought to what others will think about my writing. It's usually, very genuine and very natural, and that's how I, try to overcome that sort of block, which usually writers have.
That is really genuine and honest, and I can definitely feel that. I can feel feel the honesty, and whatever you are saying is coming from deep within the core of your soul. And I am really glad and I feel very inspired to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much.
And so, writing is not only a hobby, but an intense exercise, and it requires a lot of commitment. So, how were you able to
Definitely.
churn out time to finish your book? Because a lot
That,
of people have unfinished books, so it can help them.
mhm. Personally, to be honest, I'm like the worst person you'll meet. Like I have such poor ma time management skills. Like I am always late for everything. I'm never on time. Like I'm the most disorganized person you'll meet. So, like finding time to actually write has been super difficult for me. But honestly, also with like, school and then online learning and then my university applications, even I've personally found it very hard to find time for writing. So, I never, so, but that's never, stopped me from writing. I'll write, maybe it's like 12 at night, or maybe 3 o'clock early in the morning. And maybe I'm feeling something. I'll just write it down. I'll never, procrastinating is like the worst thing anyone can do. So, like, never procrastinate. Maybe, you're feeling something in the moment, write it in the moment. Don't like, wait for, just don't just, you know, keep pushing it,
Hmm.
like thinking, chal, tomorrow I'll write, or maybe I'll write a day after. If you're feeling it in that moment, make sure to make a note of it, maybe in your phone, or, write it or in your diary or something. And that really helps with, finding the time to actually write something. Other than that, being well balanced is very important, which I really lack. But yeah, I mean, I feel like even when you're like traveling, for example, there's like,
Hmm.
like take out time from your work to, give yourself some time. Don't burden yourself with a lot of work, and yeah, you will find the right time to write.
That's really true, and I agree. I agree, and it is a personal takeaway for everybody here. And the things you have shared are really, really impactful. I mean, you are
Thank
made
you.
of impact, and that's what you are vibing out each and every time. Whatever you are doing, whatever you are saying is really making a great impact out there.
I'm glad I can leave impact, hopefully a positive impact. And thank you so much.
So let me ask you another question. So what life lessons, I'm very much aware that your grandfather is one of your prime role models in life, and you have
Yes.
expressed that in your previous interviews. So what life lessons were you able to learn by spending time with your grandfather, Padma Shri D.Y. Patil, sir, to share?
But, well, I mean, if I had to speak about the amount of life lessons I have, learned with him, that would probably, we'll have to spend another 4 or 5 days only talking about that. But if there's one thing that I've learned, and I've like almost said it in all of my interviews and, all my speeches, that's this one quote
Hmm.
which I always, stick by. And he's always told me this, whenever I meet him, he'll always be like,
Hmm.
ego is the death of life, and death of ego is when you start living real life. And, that has such a deep meaning to it. If you have an ego, if you're always, or if you lead life by a very selfish mindset, and you always, think yourself is superior than others, then, you're never going to achieve anything in life. It's never going to satisfy you. So,
Oh.
he's always told me that, you should always lose yourself to the service of others. And that's, one of the biggest life lessons I've learned. And this is why I feel, being connected to your roots, staying in touch with your roots, always helping others, it's so important and crucial, in this day and age where people are, led by, they always want the newest gadget, or they want the newest watch. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because what matters is whether, the impact that you leave on others, and the impact you leave when you leave the world. So that's what matters the most, and that's one of the biggest life lessons I've learned. And also, being like, staying in touch with your roots. So if you have noticed, like, when he was a politician, when he was an MLA, in all his speeches that he's
Yeah.
given as a politician, he will never say, or whenever, even in fact, even when he meets people, He'll never be like, oh, I'm a politician, or I
Hmm.
run colleges, or I'm an educationist. He'll always be like, I'm a farmer first before anything else.
Okay.
And that just shows,
That,
so much of his personality and how he is in touch with his roots. And that is one of the reasons why he's one of the most humble people that I've met. And that's such a valuable life lesson to, have in life, stay in touch with your roots. So yeah, I would say that is the biggest life lesson I have got from him.
I feel personally revived, recharged, and inspired listening to you. I mean, we are all familiar with his inspiring personality, but listening you telling the things and the lessons and the wisdom that you have learned, and seeing you sharing all the wisdom so generously is uh, is effective on a different level.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being so generous with your words. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's all coming from the heart. I haven't like prepared for this or anything. It's all genuine answers.
So, at the age of 17, you are a founder of a modern and futuristic social organization. So, tell us more about DY Patil Climate Action Lab and what impact do you intend to create in the area of climate change?
Right. So let me start by saying how that idea actually, how I got the idea of starting a climate action lab.
Yeah,
Whenever I'm traveling or whenever I'm visiting these new places, one thing you notice when you go abroad is how clean the roads are. How you won't find litter on the floor, or just, how polished and refined everything looks. And then you come
hmm,
back home to India and then you just see like, garbage everywhere. And, it's not even like you can't, it's like it's it feels like so, sometimes you feel so ashamed, not ashamed exactly, but you feel so disheartened coming back to see so, people litter the roads and, make a
yeah,
mess out of our planet. And that's when I thought of, starting a climate action lab in our own country. So actually, if you see even MIT, which is Massachusetts Institute of Technology in US, even they have like this climate action lab, and they also have these other action labs where basically students they send in their proposals, which later get executed by like the management team. So I thought why not implement a similar idea in our own city? We have so many fresh, bright, young minds. We have so many NGOs who actually
yeah,
care about the environment, and all we needed was one concrete idea to actually and this I felt like creating a climate action lab was the best way in which we could bring all these minds together. And that's how I actually started the DY Patil Climate Action Lab. So basically, just to explain it in a few words, what we do is we get research proposals from NGOs and also from different people, young people, from environmentalists. So we get all the research proposals, and once we get them, we fund some of these research proposals and we also help them execute it. So, actually, in fact, before I was leaving, we were going to do a tree plantation, but that couldn't happen because of the pandemic. So that was, but in fact, one of our first events as DCAL was we had a live webinar session with Miss Srimati Menka Gandhi, who is an animal rights
yeah.
activist. So that was one of our first events. We gained a lot of insight about, animal welfare. So our activities is not just restricted to, environmental concerns, but it also extends to animal welfare. And that's what we hope to do in the future. And not just restricting ourselves to taking environmental action in Mumbai, but also we hope to, start taking these initiatives all across India to, leave as big of an impact as we can.
The sky is the limit for you, and you should definitely spread your wings without any boundaries. Fly high, take the take the leap, and I'm sure with you, everybody will rise.
Thank you so much.
So recently, you have launched your independent venture called Charity Soccer League. Can you share how you plan to use this platform to bring about progress in the field of sports and charity?
Okay, right. So, the charity soccer league, we actually is like a football. So, Let me give you a brief about what actually happened before. So I was with my friend one day, and we were just sitting in the car, and I think it was the last we were. It was like we had this football tournament one day before, and it was the finals match, and I think we lost that in penalties or something, and we were really upset about it. Because we've won every single match, and then losing in the finals. So obviously, it's like very. We were almost like we were crying. We were very sad about it. But then we were like we thought about it for a while. We were like, no, we're so blessed to even play football. We have we have the ground, we have studs, we have a football. We're so blessed to even play the game. And it's so stupid of us to cry over, losing the finals when so many people they don't have access to good football grounds. They do not have football studs. They do not have football. They do not have the means to play football with. So that's when we thought that since it was New Year approaching anyway, that let's start this football tournament and do it for charity. So that's when we came up with the Charity Soccer League, where I think it happened in 2018, I guess in January. So that was when we held our first tournament, and basically, we had around 20 plus teams that came in, and we were able to raise around over like a lakh of funds, which were given to all the pediatric patients in the hospital. And we were also very lucky to have Mr. Henry Menzies, who was the CEO of FIFA, and now he's associated to AIFC, All India Football
CEO.
Fed, WIFA, FIFA, Western India Football Association.
Okay.
He was also a former goalkeeper of India, so we were lucky to have him. He was our
Hmm.
chief guest, and it was such a great experience. And the impact that we were able to leave on others. After the tournament, it was so great. It was so emotional for all of us, and we all did this by ourselves. We all, we did not take help from anyone senior to us. It was all done by me, my friend Sanjana, and a group of committee members who we formed. So yeah, it was, and we're hoping now we're actually going to have the second season of Charity Soccer League this year in January, but of course that couldn't happen because of the pandemic. But
Yeah.
we do hope to carry forward once the situation gets better, of course.
This is a very great cause and very innovative impact, a very innovative concept of linking charity and sports.
Yeah,
And also the situation of football is very underrated in India. Football as a sport is very underrated. I mean, given the international um, thank you, Mr. Gaudi, sir. So, given the international appeal of the game, I feel that, in the environment of globalization, India should definitely uh, step into new sports field and should venture out of the cricket boundaries and step into new sports field. And
definitely.
football has a lot of scope, and there are a lot of football players in India, a lot of
Hmm.
them, and they are not getting right platform right now. So I feel whatever we are doing is really the need of the day, at least in India,
Right.
given the situation and the ignorance towards the
Correct.
football as a sports.
Absolutely. And of course, with the charity, the charity angle of the league, another thing that we were able to do is encourage youngsters to play football. And
Hmm.
also, the amount of girls team that signed up for the tournament, we were really like, great, like, very happy to see the number of girls teams that signed up for the tournament. And the way in which people like the players they played, it was like amazing. And if we can encourage this level of football, in all areas, even rural India, that'll be such a great boost to our country, and it's really going to transform our country, because I truly believe that sports is the future, and it can take sports can take India to such great heights.
Somebody just said I got a mystic book today.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. I hope you enjoy reading it.
So we will move to the next question with the thought that now it's time for India to see football as a professional endeavor more than a hobby.
Right.
It is time now. It is high time. So, Raja Lakshmi, you are a role model for millennial youth, and despite your despite your celebrity family background, you are modest and socially conscious at a very young age, and with an underline and a bold on very young age. So, what inspires you to invest in your career and the social causes? I mean, when we Google your name, we find you cleaning the beaches and picking up garbages and giving lectures and speeches to the youth, inspiring youth. So, what inspires you to go to these places and do the things you do instead of going to parties and nightclubs? I mean, there's not a single photo of you at a party or a nightclub, but there are lots of photos where we see you cleaning the beaches and talking about mangroves and being a strong voice for climate change. I mean, this is a paradox. Please explain.
Actually, a lot of people have asked me the same thing that you just asked me. Why aren't you coming for these parties? Because you'll always either find me cleaning a beach or planting trees. But
Yeah.
to be honest, I feel like sometimes, when actually I'll share a special, thing. Okay, so over the lockdown, or not just over the lockdown, a few years back, actually, I keep reading, very inspiring texts. Like, for example, I read the Bhagavad Gita. After, my friend suggested, read, like,
Oh, yeah.
she was like, why don't you read the Bhagavad Gita? Because he had recommended it to me. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then I spent my time reading the Gita. And after reading it, it has changed my life so much. I have learned so much, that in the end, you're born alone and you die alone. And what matters most is that impact that you leave in the time that you are alive. In the end, you don't die with anything, any of your, you don't die with your iPhone, you don't die with anything that you buy. It's the impact that you leave on others. And we're so coming from, as you said, coming from such a family. I feel truly blessed, to have, a roof to live under, to have food to eat on my plate, to have water to drink, to, just go to school every day. And people are not as blessed as me. They don't have there's so many people you'll see living on the street, so many people, who have to work so hard every day to get a meal. And I am so lucky, I have all of this. And that also, not that I have to, of course, I will have to work hard for it at one point of time, but right now, I'm blessed to have it, served on a platter for me. And I feel like if I can, if there's any way in which I can help people, is, maybe is, of course, through taking up these initiatives and stuff, but also, I feel compassion and having empathy for others is the key here. Once you imagine yourself in the shoe of others is when you're able to build that connect, and that's precisely why I take all my initiatives. Take, like, for example, my environmental initiatives that I've taken. A lot of people keep asking me, why do you have to clean the beach? It's not going to make a difference. Like, what difference is it going to make if, like, you go and clean the beach? People are still
Yeah.
going to go and throw. But it's that thought. It's that thought that creates an impact. Once I remember I went to clean a beach one day and I was like, Zara, why don't you come clean, my friend? Like, why don't you come and clean the beach with me? And since then we've been regularly going, and like that, you leave an impact on one person at a time, and that becomes a larger impact in the end. And also, sorry, that was my friend.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, and also because the fact that so many people um they feel like one person can't make a difference, and that's when I feel like proving people wrong, that a single impact, a small impact, or a single action taken by a person can create such a large impact. And also because when you talk about nature, you're talking about your own home. In the end, it's your own home, and imagine if someone just comes and throws like garbage in your home. How are you going to feel? Of course you're going to be offended, you're not going to like that. So of course it's I don't feel like it's some kind of pressure, I'm forced to like go clean a beach. I'm cleaning my own home in the end. So yeah, that gives me personal satisfaction, and that is what inspires me to do all of this.
That's a terrific thought, and I feel that if every single one of us, if we stop looking for excuses or looking for people to come with us, to join us in a parade, and if
Yeah.
we sort of travel this road to environment towards environmental impact alone, then I feel maybe, looking at you, other people will follow you eventually. You should
Of
not wait.
course,
We
yeah.
should not wait for other people to come with us and to sort of support and encourage us. If you, whatever you can do, you should just go ahead and do it. And in a way, you leave an impact. That is important. The
Exactly.
magnitude and the gravity of impact is regardless, irrespective. But the point is that you make a change, and more or less way, it is going to create a positive change for somebody, a microorganism or some living being.
Of course.
Some
Yeah.
living being is going to be very positively affected by what you do. And
I know,
I
yeah,
believe,
and one more thing I want to share here. So, in one of my conversations with Srimati Menka Gandhi, I remember her saying that um, when the world is a hell, and whatever you do, the world is still going to be a hell, and you can't really change that. But if there's one thing that you can do is be kind and be kind to others. So that's etched in my mind, and that's one principle that I try to follow every day.
go ahead and three cheers to you, and please carry on your spirit
Thank
for
you.
as long as you can. And a lot of people are looking up to you, and I'm sure at least some people will be inspired enough to do what you are doing, and eventually it's going to create a big change. And also
Thank
also
you.
I noticed here that especially in the sector of climate change and environment, a lot of people are taking the microphone and coming on the stage and talking, but at the end of the day they are doing nothing. They're just getting
Exactly.
publicity, they're getting away with it. But I see you, you are actually going out there in in the mangrove area, and you're planting trees, and you are um, cleaning beaches. We see you doing it, and that speaks volumes.
Thank you. No, I'm just trying to do my bit here and there. And that's one thing that bothers me, when people just keep talking about it, but like not actually doing it. Um, Also, even like you see that a lot of times in social media, it's called slacktivism, when you just like, post about a certain thing, but no action is
Activism, but
slacktivism.
slacktivism. Correct,
Slacktivism.
slacktivism.
Exactly. So when you just like maybe put up a post on Instagram or just write about it on Instagram, but then you actually don't follow it or take any action that follows it up. So that's one key problem that you see with probably my generation, and that's I think where change there needs to be a change.
Okay, a boring here, a user is telling you, "Hi, madam, I have one idea. I've created a pitch deck related to agrotech. If you are interested, I can share it."
Sure, you can just DM me. I will definitely look at it. Boring you,
So,
I think that's his username. Yes, very boring you.
so action speaks more than words.
For
Carry
sure.
on this mantra, and you are an inspiration in that way.
Thank you so
So,
much.
what are your thoughts on God and spirituality? You have recently said in this conversation that you have read Bhagavad Gita, so you can elaborate on how that helped you develop a concept or idea of God and spirituality.
I'm not really, I don't know a lot about, spirituality and all. I won't be able to, comment a lot on it. But yes, I have read the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, I do believe in God. And that's also because of, my upbringing and my parents and my culture which have, my parents have always, believed in God. And one of the reasons, why my dad has achieved so much. But yes, I think like after reading the Gita, of course, it has, opened my perspective towards life. And yes, I would highly suggest everyone to read it because, you just start realizing how irrelevant and how impactful your actions can be at the same time. And one more thing I remember from reading in the Gita is that having a very calm and stable mind, that's I feel like that is the key to success. Once your mind is filled with negativity or anger, jealousy, which are considered the sins in my religion, or as mentioned in the Gita, that's when you start that's when you start have developing these negative thoughts, and that's eventually going to bring you down as a person. So I remember there was one line in the Gita that said, you should focus or concentrate between both your eyes, the third eye. And once you
Okay.
keep doing that, close your eyes and just keep focusing on your third eye, which is supposed to be in the middle. That's when you start developing a very positive and calm mind. So, I tried doing that once before my exams, I believe, and that helped me so much. It actually helped me so much. And yes, of course, I pray, I pray every day. I really believe in God. And I remember once I remember the Swami, there was this religious function that was happening at the
Okay.
stadium. Swami Mahant, his function was happening in the stadium, and there was an ambulance passing at the same time, like on next to the road on the stadium, and the patient in the ambulance was very critical, and there was like very low chances of him surviving. But once he crossed the stadium where the event was happening, the Swami Mahant Maharaj's event was happening. He became well after that. Can you believe it? Like he was fine. He
Oh,
wasn't critical after that. And I obviously, I didn't believe that when someone told me this. But then it turned out to be true. And that's the power. Being spiritual or believing in God can have you. And regardless of whether you believe in God or whether you don't believe in God, but these key lessons from these religious texts of having a calm mind, not being envious, it's so important and so useful. And that's helped me so much in life. And it gives you a sort of direction. If you just keep wandering without any sense of purpose or direction, you're not going to land up anywhere. It's like it's like boarding a flight, but you don't know your final destination or where you're going. You need some sort of direction. You need to know the wind speed. You need to know what altitude you're going at. You need to know the route you're going to take. And if you don't know all of that, you're not going to reach anywhere. So I think spirituality and God has given me that direction in life.
um, all right. So, in the sector of religion and God, people are really confused, and especially at this age, and including me, I had to,
I wear a Om necklace every day. I pray every day.
that's that has really moved me on a very, very deep level, and I feel really calm and tranquil at this moment listening to you. Uh,
And
I
if you don't
really,
mind, I want to share
yeah,
another
sure.
story. Yeah, so I remember I was sitting with Dada, my grandfather, and he was telling me that keep
Okay.
praying to God, keep saying, for example, if I want to maybe for example, if I want to win like this football competition, then keep saying it in your mind that I'm gonna win it, I'm gonna win it. Keep on saying it in your mind, and the power of manifestation has so much you know the power of manifestation can be so great. It can make you achieve so much. So I remember him telling me that when he was like a couple of years ago, his one of his dreams was of course to be the governor, to achieve governorship. And he kept saying it, he kept praying to God, he kept saying it in his mind that I will be governor one day, I will be governor one day. He kept saying it, repeating it. And he ended up being the governor of 3 states. And that's the
Three.
power. That's the power of manifestation. That's the power praying to God, and believing in your dreams can have in your life.
It's all about the mind power eventually.
Of course, 100%.
I mean, we read a lot about it these days, and we read a lot of words, but there are very few stories
Yeah,
about the power of mind. There are
I think you will
there
only learn these stories from people.
from people, from talking to people, and you share not one but two stories that are very huge and very, very powerful.
Very
I mean,
powerful indeed.
and very moral, and they have a very strong morale rooted to them.
Of
And
course.
it's a takeaway for someone living in any part of the world, any part of the world can live by the values and the principles given by these stories, and he or she may not necessarily be Indian or Western or Eastern. That's what. There is a universal appeal to your stories and to your example.
And of course, I'm not saying that, if you say it 100 times in your head, it's going to actually happen. You have to make it happen. Of course, your actions also count. It's not just that if you keep saying it in your mind, or if you think that, oh, if I pray to God, it's going to happen. God's going to make it happen. No, God's not going to make it happen. You're the one who is going to make it happen, and God is going to bless you. His blessings are going to be with you. But that's only given that you work hard, you are, truthful in your actions, and you actually and you do not bring others down at the same time when you're trying to achieve it. So yes,
Yes,
of
that
course,
is
taking that action and ownness by yourself is very important.
that is very important, because in our world we are so competitive and there is cutthroat competition in all fields, and especially you are from an education background, and you yourself must have witnessed it, and in your life and around your life, and there is a lot of competition in schools and education, and that's what we are being grilled with. Compete with each other and you will be victorious. Put each other down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One of you will be at the top. And that is actually not true. And you have achieved, and we can see what you have achieved, and I am glad about the kind of principles that you are cherishing and you are treasuring, and I'm glad that with these kind of principles you have achieved what you have achieved.
Thank you so much.
So I would love to ask you something very special and something really close to me. So what does the idea of feminism mean to you? Being a girl,
Feminism.
being yes, being an educated woman, being an educated girl, traveling around the world and talking to so many people and seeing the world for what it is. What does it mean to you? And do you what are your thoughts about this? Or women
Right.
empowerment, feminism or women empowerment?
So one thing first I want to clear before going on this topic is that a lot of people, misinterpret the meaning of feminism. Feminism doesn't mean, when the woman is above the man or the man is above the woman. It's when both men and women are equal. And being a feminist doesn't mean that you support women being more superior than men. Being a feminist is about advocating for gender equality, where both all genders are equal. And that is what feminism is. And yes, I am a feminist in that sense that I want to live in a world where both men and women and all genders are treated equally, respectfully. And what annoys me the most is that even though we as a country have progressed, have developed, and have able how we've been able to get rid of certain practices, such as take sati for example, where women had to burn themselves in fire. you know Even though we were able to get over such practices, there's still a lot of gender inequality that exists in our countries. And that's largely to do with the mindset of people. A lot of the times you find people who believe that, women, like girls, उनका खाली काम घर पे है. मतलब, रसोई में काम करना या खाना बनाना. Like, that's what they believe. That's the job of the woman. And I feel like if that mind changes, when women are allowed to work freely, when women can, dress freely, when women can voice their opinions, and to the same level as men. That doesn't mean women are given rights more than men, but when they achieve this same level as men, I feel that's when we as a country, are respectful towards all genders, and that's ideally what I live by. Once, a lot of times, even in like rural India, you'll find like girls aren't sent to schools. It's usually the boys who are sent to schools, and every family they'll be like, if it's they always want a male child in their family because they
Yes,
believe that the boy is the one who carries the household forward, he's the breadwinner of the family. So this we live in this patriarchal system where the male is usually the leader of the family. So once that changes, and when women are given more leadership positions, when women are given, the voice, the platform to speak is something that I truly believe will create a great, it's going to be the time when when we have developed like open mindsets. Um, and yes, of course, like, luckily, where the family that I come from, my father, he's encouraged both his daughters and his son, he's treated us all equally. So I feel like once people start, people don't have that mindset, it's that ideally is what feminism is.
So I'm glad that you have put forward the right angle and narrative of feminism, because just like religion, I would say people are very confused about what feminism is exactly, and a lot of critics are pointing out that women are using feminism as a kind of a weapon to suppress men, but that is actually not true. And even today, there is a lot of gender inequality even today. I mean, not only in
Of
India but
course.
in other countries as well. There are things happening in the corporate. There is glass ceiling. There is gender pay gap, and in Indian context, there is still, you know, the tradition of passing all the property to the man and not the women,
Yeah.
even educated families. So I feel that this awareness is very important.
Yeah, and one more
And
thing I'd like to add to what you just said is that, of course, it also is also society that needs to encourage women, but also women need to be encouraged themselves. Even like a lot of the times, I find so many women being like, they're so like they lack motivation, they lack encouragement. They feel like their job is only to work in the homes. Like even if they have the opportunities to do so, they do not want to make the effort and or maybe fight for their rights or like take the opportunities that are available for them. So I feel women also a lot of the times they have like these laid back mindsets, and those are the
yes,
section of people that need to be educated and sort of their mindsets need to be changed. So it's not only society that needs like is to be blamed for this, but also like women who are to be blamed for not being willing to take these opportunities that lie ahead of them.
true, true. I mean, even women are carriers of patriarchy in a way. I mean, first,
Yes.
after marriage, there are a lot of women who voluntarily leave their career and their dreams aside and are, either they are living by their husband's name, or they are looking after their children. And these are
Yeah.
two very different aspects. I mean, either
Hmm.
they want to back feminism on, based on their husband's wealth and money and fame. They don't have anything of their own, and they're
Right.
happy about it. And secondly, some people are women are so ingrained with the idea that okay, after marriage I'm looking after my children, I am looking after my in-laws, and that's it, that is my life.
Hmm.
I don't deserve anything else.
Oh, by the way,
So
that's my sister who's here. Do you want to say hi? Okay,
yeah, sure.
she just back from like climbing the mountain and stuff, and okay, that's. Do you want to say hi? Okay, well, she's just coming. I'm so sorry. Okay, she just like climbed a mountain. Sorry.
That she climbed. Okay, she's a mountaineer.
No, it's like we have to do these expeditions every weekend, so she just came back.
Okay, that's lovely. You have a company of very, very active and great minds around you, doing different things, doing different activities.
Oh yeah,
All
yeah, for sure.
mountains, always climb mountains and always reach the top, always reach the summit.
It's gonna be hard, but the view is worth it.
Ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it was a definitely enlightening perspective and very empowering about all the things, about education, about feminism, about women, about God, spirituality, Bhagavad Gita, and a lot of about charity and about social entrepreneurship, about independence. It was very, very enlightening. So there are a couple of questions from audience now.
Hmm.
So has asked you, can we, Boring here has asked you, can we reform our education system, which is only behind marks and not on skills like coding, designing, farming, entrepreneurship?
Of course, I mean, everything needs change, and of course, educational system also does need reform. And actually, some people have also asked me, why are you going and studying abroad? Why can't you study, in your own school back here or in your own college back here? Aren't Indian schools good enough? And my answer to these people have always been that there's always so much to learn from educational systems abroad. And if if the technology, the curriculum, the syllabus that is used here can be implemented back home, that can make so much of a difference. Of course, one problem that I find with Indian
What
schools.
difference do you find in the education in Switzerland and in education system in India? What
Right.
difference did you?
So one particular difference that I found was that in Indian schools or colleges, one thing, so a lot of rote learning or memorizing happens in these, in Indian schools. I remember, so many times I've had to, learn, memorize, textbooks and, just memorize so much. I've had breakdowns doing that, it's been so difficult. And if, that can be revamped, and if, curriculums can be made more about how it can be applied to real life, that would be so much that would be so much more, that would be better than just learning a bunch of facts and probably never using it in your life again. So that's one thing that's done here. They teach you real life, knowledge that's going to help you in the real knowledge that's going to help you in the real world. And I feel like if that's done in Indian schools, and also education isn't just learning from textbooks. Education isn't just, reading a bunch of lines or, anything like that. Education is, the development of your mind, body, and spirit, which is, kind of like the motto of my school. So, education is maybe learning to climb a mountain or, learning to cook food. So, that's what they focus on here. They do not just focus on your academic development, but, the overall development um of yourself. So, I feel like schools in India should, of course, encourage, sports. Sports, I feel, is very important. Being fit, having, and also I feel like mental health is one aspect in schools and colleges that needs to be emphasized. Because a lot of the times you see students before exams or something, they under so much pressure, so much burden, so much stress. And a lot of the time schools and colleges do not focus enough on students' well-being and mental health. um I feel like being schools should encourage um being mentally healthy. And I feel like that's lacking in most Indian schools and colleges, and that's something that needs to be changed. And that's one difference that I find here and back home.
Okay, true with you. I mean, thank God there is somebody out there who feels
A
similar
lot of
like
people
me.
out there.
I'm not alone here, and there were moments when I felt trapped, restricted, and sort of my brain bursting out of itself. There are
Oh,
moments,
trust me, I've
and
been
I'm
through the
sure,
same. Yeah.
yeah, every Indian student can relate to this. So, there are a couple of people who want to read your poem.
Hmm.
Oh, and there is Mr. Gordy Jackson from London asking you, you have a guitar with you, and what does it to you?
That's a great question. Oh my God. Okay. My guitar is actually my best friend, my closest friend. It actually means so much to me. Whenever I'm feeling depressed or when I'm feeling low, I'm always, I'll just grab my guitar and play a song, and that makes me feel so much better. Like I remember one night before my exams, I was literally just playing the guitar, and that, was such a stress buster for me, and that helped me so much. It's actually my best friend, and probably it can change my mood in the matter of a few seconds. And music has played such an important part in in my life. And also I'm part of a band, I'm